If saving our planet is a race against time, the European Union is still inching along. 150 years have been enough for humanity to warm the planet by more than 1 degree. It won't even take half a century to reach an additional degree, and it will then go faster and faster. The machine of global warming is racing out of control. Likewise, the collapse of biodiversity. In the space of 40 years, 60% of the populations of mammals, reptiles, birds, fish and amphibians have disappeared. And what is Europe doing about it? It's merely warming up. In 2015, the European Union committed itself through the Paris Agreement to limit climate change below 2 degrees centigrade and, if possible, 1.5 degrees centigrade. The marathon has begun, and Europe sees itself taking the lead. But 3 years later, it has yet to be turned into action. The European Union and its member states are still the 3rd largest greenhouse gas emitter in the world after China and the United States, and less than a quarter of the species and habitats supposed to be protected by European nature laws are in a healthy state of conservation. So what is the European colossus waiting for? Does it have other emergencies? The economy, jobs, competitiveness. Fair enough, but what if the best way to preserve our competitiveness were to implement ecological transition? The ecosystems that we are degrading provide us with many services: clean air, water, and carbon absorption. Almost 70% of the food in the world depends on pollination by bees and other insects. And who offers us the pleasure of a walk in the forest or a sunset? The value of these services provided free of charge by our ecosystems is estimated at 110 trillion euros, almost 1.5 times the GDP of all the countries on the planet in 1 year. If all of this disappeared, who would pay the bill? OK, but what about jobs in all this? They fare better when they're in relation with the ecological transition. Between 2000 and 2015, the growth rate of green jobs in Europe was 7 times higher than that of all other jobs together. There is more to life than the economy. There is also health. There's no getting away from the facts. The best social security ever invented remains a healthy environment. In Europe, 422,000 premature deaths are caused by air pollution annually. To stop polluting our environment means to stop asphyxiating ourselves. Making Europe climate neutral by 2050 would save 200 billion euros a year in health spending. What about the role of our future representatives in the European Parliament in all this? Today, 80% of national environmental legislation comes from the European Union. That includes policies such as agriculture and fisheries, where the EU has a lot of influence. Europe can be part of the solution. It can drive an ambitious, coherent policy to address the environmental, economic and social crises we are facing. Defenders or gravediggers, destroyers or saviours, European countries must choose sides. That's fortunate because between the 23rd and 26th of May, citizens are called upon to vote to elect a new European Parliament and therefore have the opportunity to make their voices heard. And not just any voices. Members of the European Parliament have a key role to play. When it comes to adopting legislation, they have as much weight as the Council, the body that represents the 28 governments. Nothing can be done without these parliamentarians, and they are often pushing for more environmental ambitions in the face of reluctant governments. Often, but not always, the Parliament voted in favour of banning single-use plastics, but voted against member state transparency on fossil fuel subsidies. At the end of May, we will elect parliamentarians who will be able to vote, for example, for or against an industrial agricultural policy that destroys ecosystems and jobs in agriculture, for or against sustainable fishing in Europe that allows fish stocks to recover, for or against more ambitious air quality standards that give us breathing space. Europe is at a turning point. WWF has been proposing a European Sustainability Pact for several months. It invites candidates and future European leaders to adopt a series of objectives and actions. 1. Give the EU a leading role on the international stage to achieve an ambitious global agreement on environmental protection in 2020. 2. Adopt a binding plan of action to combat imported deforestation caused by our imports of soybeans, palm oil, cocoa, etc. 3. Reorient the financial system to boost investment in the green economy. 4. overhaul the EU's agricultural policy to support sustainable farming and those who take care of nature. 5. Achieve climate neutrality by 2040 and increase renewable energy and energy-saving targets. Between the 23rd and 26th of May, choose a greener Europe that defends the environment and thus our health and jobs.